Divorce isn't just an end, it's a beginning. But it's not the beginning people expect. It's not the fresh start filled with freedom and happiness that many think of when they hear the word divorce. For a man, the reality that unfolds after divorce is something that most people don't expect. It's something his ex-wife didn't expect either. And here's the kicker. What happens after the divorce is not about what he lost. It's about what he gained, what he finally sees, what he finally understands, and how his entire perspective shifts. Because men, after a divorce, don't become cold or detached, as people love to label them. No, they simply become accurate. And that difference, that shift from emotional overinvestment to clear-sighted self-preservation, is everything. When people say a man changed after a divorce, they are not describing what actually happened. They're only reacting to what he stopped doing. He stopped chasing. He stopped explaining himself. He stopped overgiving. From the outside, that looks like emotional distance, but from the inside, it's clarity. Let's break this down, because no man starts out cold. He doesn't start detached. He doesn't start emotionally distant. When a man enters a relationship, especially a marriage, he enters it with open hands. He starts open to connection, open to love, open to building something real. He believes that if he gives enough, time, effort, love, care, something solid will be built. And in the beginning, that belief feels true. At first, there's connection, there's attention, there's mutual effort, there's energy flowing back and forth. The relationship feels like a partnership. It feels mutual. There is a natural exchange, a flow of effort and appreciation. The man feels like his investment is worth it. But here's what he doesn't realize. The beginning is not the system. It's only the entry point. The real system, the one that will govern the relationship over time, reveals itself later, after the honeymoon phase, after the promises and sweet moments fade. And that's where everything changes. Over time, something subtle happens. At first, it's hard to notice. His effort stays the same. He's still giving, still trying, still believing in the system. But the return changes, slowly, gradually, not immediately, but steadily. She becomes less consistent. She becomes less present. She invests less. She becomes less invested. And he doesn't immediately understand why. But his effort? His effort remains the same, or in many cases increases. Why? Because he's been taught that if something feels off, you fix it. That's what he knows. So he compensates. He gives more. He gives more patience, more understanding, more attention. And for a while, this stabilizes things. It stops things from falling apart. But here's the key. It doesn't fix anything. It only covers up the imbalance. And that's the trap. Because once imbalance is covered, it becomes normalized. Now his efforts aren't extra, they're expected. And when something becomes expected, it stops being appreciated. That's when the system locks in. Now, he's no longer choosing to give, he's required to give. And required effort becomes invisible effort. This is where the drain begins. But not emotionally, structurally. Because now he's not just thinking about himself, he's thinking about everything else. He's thinking about what's wrong, what needs fixing, what needs adjusting. And this is where things get deeper. He starts to notice patterns, not feelings. He starts noticing that the more he gives, the more is required. The more he adjusts, the less things improve. The more he tolerates, the more he has to tolerate. And none of that makes sense. Because effort should create results. But in this case, it doesn't. And when effort doesn't produce results, the brain does something interesting. It stops trusting emotions and starts analyzing reality. That's the moment clarity begins. It's not because he wants it to. It's simply the only explanation for what's happening. And once clarity enters the equation, everything starts changing. Because now, he can't unsee it. Once he starts seeing the patterns, he can't go back. He starts noticing the way attention works. He notices how validation works. He realizes how easily things shift when his effort changes. He knows how things will react even before they do. And that realization is dangerous because now he's no longer emotionally invested in the same way. He's aware, and awareness creates distance. Not emotional distance, strategic distance. He starts pulling back, not because he doesn't care, but because he now understands the system. He's not the same man he was when he entered. His clarity has restructured him. The problem is, no one tells men this. No one tells them that after all the years of giving, of sacrificing, of trying harder, they will eventually have to let go of the system that hasn't worked. No one prepares men for the fact that one day they will wake up and realize it doesn't work anymore. Once a man reaches that level of clarity, everything changes. He doesn't react the same way. He doesn't overgive. He doesn't overextend. He becomes more selective, not based on emotional need, but on structural understanding. He starts asking himself different questions. Is this worth it? Is this sustainable? Does this align with my needs? And when the answer is no, he steps away. He stops overcompensating. He stops explaining himself. He stops chasing, because he's seen enough. He's lived through enough imbalance to know more effort doesn't solve the problem. That's when the shift happens. That's when the real change occurs, not just in the relationship, but in him. He goes from being emotionally involved to being strategically aware. He pulls back, not because he doesn't care, but because he's gained something that the relationship didn't give him: clarity. The moment a man sees the patterns, everything becomes simple. He understands that systems, relationships, aren't about passion alone. They're about reciprocity, about balance, about both people contributing to the system in a healthy, meaningful way. And once he sees this, he stops chasing something that can't be fixed. The reality your ex-wife didn't expect after divorce is this: he didn't stop caring. He stopped overgiving. He stopped expecting something to change when it wasn't working. He stopped pouring into a system that couldn't return what it was taking. And once he saw that, he stopped participating. This doesn't make him cold. This makes him strategic. It makes him aware. It makes him accurate in his assessment of people, situations, and relationships. Because now he knows something deep. You don't get better results from more effort. You get better results from balance. He becomes selective. Not out of fear or bitterness, but out of understanding. He becomes cautious, not because he can't invest, but because he values what he's learned. He knows that the more effort he gives to the wrong things, the more he drains himself and the people around him. And that's the harsh truth no one talks about when it comes to divorce. The man you used to know didn't just change because he stopped loving. He changed because he finally saw the cost. And once he saw the cost, he made a decision. A decision to protect his peace, to protect his energy, to protect what he has left. This isn't about giving up. This is about making a choice that prioritizes himself and his needs over the hope that things might eventually get better. Because he understands now, and once you understand, you stop repeating the same mistakes. This is the reality that most people don't prepare you for after divorce. The man doesn't become cold, he becomes clear. He becomes more accurate, and the reality is, once he sees clearly, he doesn't go back to who he was before. The reality your ex-wife didn't expect is this: you didn't just survive the divorce, you thrived in the face of it. You didn't fall apart, you didn't spiral. Instead, you rebuilt your life, found peace, and embraced the freedom that comes with moving on. And that, my friend, is something she could never have predicted. If you've experienced this shift in your life, comment, "I'm free." Because once you see the power of freedom and independence, there's no going back. Divorce isn't the end, it's just the beginning.